Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got my friend Jeff Lester of Hunt Hard Outfitters, based out of Arizona. We're going to be talking today about New Mexico. Jeff's been guiding in New Mexico for 20 plus years. Jeff, how you doing?
Great, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I guess before we get into the ins and outs of the New Mexico applications, we've got a deadline coming up March 18th, and I just want to know from your idea from your standpoint, what kind of conditions, are applicants looking at, going into what we know as the application season, and what are the variables in front of us that would help guys make a good decision?
Well, this year, weather-wise, I think we're wetter than we were last year in 19. And in last year we had a really wet spring, and we had a really good year because of it. Obviously, Arizona and New Mexico were both really good last year, especially compared to the year before. And this year, I think we're right on course to be right in line with last year. I just recently made a trip over there to visit some ranchers, and all the north hillsides of all the peaks have, really deep snow on them. Even down low in some places on the north hillsides had, 8 to 12 inches of snow on it. So the high peaks I've heard, over in the Gila, they've got upwards of 40, 50 inches on the mountain. So I think it's going to be a really, really good year again. So I think the outlook for this year is good.
When you talk about last year in New Mexico, the antler growth was really good, but we didn't have much monsoonal moisture in July and August. Of course, we had really good rain starting, I think, at the end of August and in September and October, but kind of in that, really wet period, our normal monsoon period, there wasn't much. How did that affect the rut in your mind over there?
The rut was, I thought the rut was pretty good. In most of the units we were hunting, it was pretty solid. In the desert type units, 13, 17, 12 over there in some of that country, we saw that be a little more spotty. The mountainous units, with the big timber and stuff, over in the Gila and stuff, seemed like everything there was pretty good. We also saw in some of those more arid units, the back ends of the elk, that did get affected a little bit because they came into the spring and into the summer solid, and then it did dry up pretty hard, and a lot of the bulls didn't quite finish out that great. I mean, it just depended on, specifically where that animal was, getting his feed and everything, but we did see the back ends in some of those drier units be affected. Over in the Gila, everything was, top notch. We talk about horn growth a lot of times with our moisture, and that doesn't necessarily mean that everything blew up way above and beyond what it should be. It was just, this is what it should be on a normal year when, everything is aligned and the moisture's good. So that's what we saw across the board. 85% of what we were hunting was solid last year, as well as this eastern side of Arizona that we hunt in 1 and 27 and 3A, 3C and stuff. I mean, all this stuff was pretty good, last year. So we're expecting this, like I said, to be good again.
With that being said, you're thinking it's wetter this year than it was last, and, we came off a horrible drought in 2018. What's your thought of 2 years in a row elk, being able to have 2 good, solid moisture years in a row as far as antler growth? I mean, do you think there's no excuse for this season for the antlers to be as big as they possibly will be?
I think we'll see. I'm not going to say an increase. Obviously, age class has a huge part to play with that. And when you're talking the 2 states, New Mexico, I would say has a lower age class than most of Arizona just due to tag numbers. Most of New Mexico is a 300 to 320 upper end bull hunt with, that occasional bull over 330 to 350 in being in specific units. I mean, all the units over there have those kind of bulls. But as you go up in size, the percentage drops. And when you have like a bad year, like where the monsoon wasn't really, super hot last year, the grass came on kind of late. So it did give them something going into winter, but as they move on to the browse and stuff, I mean, certain places had, a lot better grass than others. That is correct. So you just have to play that off, see how things go this year off of what's on the ground right now, and most of the stuff over there, from what I noticed this year, was, it had decent feed going into winter. A couple of areas were pretty sparse, but most of it was pretty good. So I think that the antler growth is, I don't think there's any reason for it not to be pretty solid this year. It should be fine. And, areas in, especially in Arizona on this side of the state, in the late hunts, we had such a giant, snowstorm before that late hunt that piles of tags were turned back in. And I don't think a lot of those tags got filled, reissued, because people turned them in right up to the day of the hunt. And a lot of those bulls, I think a lot of bulls lived in, 1 in 27 compared to, on a normal year. So I think this year those units, might pump out some, some solid bulls just due to bulls getting another, year of age on them. So
in New Mexico, your outfit is Hunt Hard Outfitters, and you've been over there for 20 years. You've got several aspects of the way you hunt over there. You've got your landowner tags where you have connections with landowners, and people can call you directly and just buy an elk hunt. They don't have to put in for the draw. You've got your outfitter pool, which people can apply with you and other outfitters out there. And then you just have, the resident pool and then the non-resident pool in the non-outfitted pool. Talk a little bit about, first, your landowner tag program and your guaranteed hunts, if you will, and then kind of talk about New Mexico's structure. And then we've obviously got some new little goofy changes. Although it seems like anytime there's ever a change, goofy is a good word for it if you're not used to it. But let's talk about some of the changes, how it affects non-residents. But first, talk about your landowner stuff.
Okay, so landowner tags in the state of New Mexico are landowner tags that are allocated to, it's basically on elk usage. So let's use an example. Say a guy's got 1,000 acres, and they do a study or see how many elk are coming in and using his land. So the Game and Fish is going to give that landowner X amount of tags as in compensation for what the elk are maybe using on his property. So he may get 1 tag, he may get 2. If he has 5,000 acres, he could get 3, he could get 5. It just depends on what the Game and Fish gives that specific landowner. That landowner then can take that tag, even though it's called a landowner tag, that tag can be used private only or unit wide. If it's unit wide, he is, by law, is supposed to open his land up to the public. So if he's got 5,000 acres and he makes his tags unit wide, if I buy those tags, I can then hunt all of the National Forest, BLM, and public in that unit and his ranch, his private land, but anyone else can hunt his private land as well. Now, if he has, say, 40,000 acres and he makes those tags ranch only, now that tag is only good for that private land. It cannot be hunted off of that private land. So we only deal in unit-wide private land tags. Basically, if you are using ranch-only landowner tags, you're basically leasing the ranch. If you bought 10 tags on, say, 15,000 acres, and you made those ranch only, you're in essence leasing that ranch to hunt that private. And we don't deal with any of that because we have our own opinions about the private land in New Mexico. So, in my opinion, a lot of the ranches are overpopulated, meaning they give too many tags for the amount of private that somebody has. And, an outfitter has to use those tags to pay for his lease. And so sometimes that can be a bad deal, in my opinion. Obviously, there's some ranches, over on the eastern side of the state or something that are huge, 40, 50,000 acres. Now, that might be a little different in a ranch of that size. So the tags that we buy are unit-wide tags. We take that tag, we sell that to a person. This year he can book a spot and hunt on that landowner tag. And then the hunt cost is on top of that, as well as the license and stamps and everything that goes through the state. You still have to purchase all of that. And then that money, has nothing really to do with our outfit. We pay that to the rancher for the allocation of the tag. And getting into the 10% versus 6%, so in New Mexico, there's an outfitter-sponsored draw. So if there's 100 tags, 16 of that 100 are going to go to non-resident hunters. 6% are going to go to non-residents that apply on their own or through the 6% pool, and 10% are going to go into the outfitter-sponsored pool. To be eligible for the 10%, you have to be contracted with a New Mexico outfitter and have a contract signed with them to put in to that pool. And that, on some hunts it doubles your odds, and on some hunts it might be less than the 6%. It just depends. That's why it's important to, there's all kinds of ways you can look up the percentages of what hunt you're looking at to try to draw, if it's better to put in through the outfitted pool or not. Like I said, most of the hunts, it benefits putting in with an outfitter if you're looking to get, 1 or 2% better odds at drawing a tag. Some of it 3 or 4, some of it's double. It just depends.
And then what's this goofy change that they've got going? It seems like it affects applicants that are putting, 3, 4 guys on an application, and it seems like it's affecting those low tag number units more than, the big tag number units. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so for 2020, the adjustment that's been made to the breakdown between non-residents and residents, it's kind of confusing unless you're just looking at a table that shows exactly what it is. But let's just use an example. So the graph that I'm using here, so if one person is on the application, so an individual is putting in for a tag, and there has to be 7 tags available for that hunt, for that individual to draw in that hunt. If there's 2 people on the application, there has to be 19 19 tags available for the 2 to draw. So if you had 3 people on the application and there's 19 tags available, basically you're not going to be eligible to draw that tag, is the way I understand it. Now, don't take anything I'm saying as this is kind of confusing, and I've studied it a little bit just to make sure I'm kind of getting this correct. But that's the way I understand it. And then, 3 people on an application, there'd have to be 25. So really the hunts that it's going to really affect are the low number antelope hunts, some of the low number, premium deer hunts. I don't think there's any elk that, I'm not saying there's any, but there might be an elk hunt here or there that it makes a difference on. But any low tag number hunts, basically, for an antelope hunt, say there's 10 tags available for an antelope hunt, then you basically need to put in 1 single applicant on the application. You can't put 2 because you won't be eligible to draw the tag. Basically, it's not going to round up. In the old days, it rounded up. So if there was 10 tags and the 9th name out of the hat was this non-resident, and there was 10 tags, they would give 11 tags for that hunt, but they're not doing that anymore. It will not be rounded up.
The moral of the story is on those low tag allocation hunts, just make sure that you either apply by yourself or apply with just one other person. Watch those, 4 people on an app situation on those low tag number, even 3 on an app. It's just something
Correct.
to watch out for.
And on the minimum quota needed for the 6%, it's even going to be higher. You got to remember that. So an individual putting in, it's a less percentage. So there would have to be 13 tags available in the hunt for a guy to draw in the 6% pool. And vice versa. It's going to go up, according to the percentage given. So
The reality, it sounds like me, is you had said before we got on the podcast that there's definitely some resident coalition or resident hunters that are kind of they don't like the non-resident hunter as much, and they want more opportunity for the resident hunter. And it sounds like their voice has bended a few ears and made these changes, right? I mean, there has to be someone that's pushing for this.
Yeah, I mean that's how I kind of see it. I mean, the residents are wanting more tags given to the residents of New Mexico, which it's hard not to argue that. Sometimes people see that. I mean, we've seen that same type of deal happen here in Arizona with a few lawsuits and different things. I mean, people they feel like we're the residents of this state and we deserve more of the tags. New Mexico does have a system that caters to business and outfitters and different things as well because of the 10% pull. And there's obviously going to be opinions one way or the other on that, how people, decipher, how that system works. And, there's going to be an opinion, good and bad on both sides. And I hear it from time to time and see it. And, I have quite a few friends in New Mexico, and some of them have voiced that before, and some run businesses over there and see and understand the business side of it as well. So,
if you're talking about the units, kind of your bread and butter units, a lot of those units are the 16s, right? I mean, the 16 A, B, C, D.
Yeah, the 16 units are primarily your go-to units in the state of New Mexico. Like we talked earlier, most of the western side of the state over to the Arizona border, you have your 15, your 23 that border the state, and 12. So underneath I-40, you have Unit 12, and then you come down, you have Unit 15 and Unit 23. And then as you work your way east in New Mexico, you start getting into your other units like 13, 17, all your 16 units. And that area primarily is the bulk of the premier elk hunting in New Mexico. Not that there's not some solid elk hunting in northern New Mexico. I'm not taking anything away from that. But what we hunt, what Hunt Hard Outfitters hunts, that's kind of our bread and butter on, the areas that we hunt. The 16 units obviously are your toughest units to draw due to not only tag numbers in certain units are lower because they're maybe managed a little better, and they're popular. And, they're probably the only units in the state that are ranked at, that 330, 340 plus bull at killing that kind of bull. Not that all the other units don't have those kind of bulls. It's just the higher percentage of those bulls are killed in more of those units. And they are a difficult draw. The draw odds for most of the 16 units are 2 to 3%. So they are tough draw odds. So
one of the things that's interesting about New Mexico as we go through all these different states is New Mexico doesn't have a bonus point system or a preference point system. It's basically you just put in and everybody goes into the draw every year with as good a chance as they had the following year. Is that correct? I mean, talk a little bit about your thoughts on the way that they do things and being an opportunity state as far as, it's not required to have preference points or bonus points, that you can just apply every year and try and get a tag.
Okay, so you're correct. New Mexico is not a point holding state. You don't accumulate points such as Arizona. So if a guy calls and he wants to swing for the fence and he wants to just put in for the best of the best, we can apply him in that first, second, or third choice in 2 or 3% draw odds for all three choices. And his odds at drawing those tags are as good as anyone else's. Everybody is getting thrown in the same hat when it comes to drawing those tags. Now, Of course, non-resident outfitter pull 10%, resident pull is 84%. But you're not being penalized for not applying year to year, and that does make a big difference because I have guys in Arizona that they're going to obviously put in for points maybe on a specific year, where New Mexico, if a guy says I have a hunt planned in Alaska this year over archery season, he's an archery hunter, I say, okay, well, you're just not going to put in for New Mexico that year.
Right, and he's not penalized for that.
Yeah, he's not penalized for that. He just steps out a year.
Right.
Every year in my pool, I have 2 big old stacks of, these guys are out of the draw this year because they got other plans. So, where Arizona, everybody has to put in. Whether you're putting in for points only, they're going to get that license fee out of you no matter what. That's why I tell guys, in Arizona, you're in it for the long haul. You've got to be consistent with putting in, make sure you don't miss dates because it hurts you if you miss. Where in New Mexico, if you opt out one year, then it doesn't hurt you. You come right back the next year and you're right back in the draw, bidding for the tags like everybody else. The advantage, there are some advantages to that I see because obviously people feel that, it's a little more fair where it's just a luck of the draw deal. The problem is I know, I have one hunter that has drawn 6 out of 10 years. And then I have other guys that have been in the system 10 years and never had a tag. Never been able to draw a tag. And so, yeah, it's good and it's bad. Because I guess if you're lucky, then that's good, Some of the hunts that may make affect, like there is hunts that if you're really into drawing tags, there's hunts in New Mexico, if you research it, that have fairly good draw odds for non-resident hunters. Now those hunts might not be on everyone's radar. I myself have killed I've killed more bulls in the state of New Mexico as a non-resident than I have as a resident in Arizona. But I've also put in for hunts that are not very popular.
Yeah.
And went over and hunted archery when most guys don't want to be in the woods. In that first season, I've killed a lot of bulls myself, and it's in high draw odd units. And, that might be 315 to 325 kind of bulls. But it was just, so I could get in the woods and hunt myself,
I want to break down a couple of the units that you hunt. Before we do that, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank Go Hunt Insider. Remind you guys that it's application season. If you want to become a Go Hunt Insider member, which I highly recommend you do, go to gohunt.com/JScott. You sign up. That's going to get you a $50 Go Hunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up. Then you'll have all the access to all the different states, all the different animals, different harvest statistics, draws, strategy applications, or application strategies, and all the things that they do over there at Go Hunt. I strongly suggest you check them out, gohunt.com/JScott. I also want to thank Go Hunt. Cody Nelson, my friend of 20-plus years, is the optics manager. If you guys are looking to purchase any optics, whether it be binos, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, tripods, anything to do with glassing, anything to do with optics, give Cody a call, 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. You can also text him or call him on his cell phone, 602-399-3699. I appreciate Cody and all the hard work that he does with customers, and I get messages every day from the great customer service that he gives to the J. Scott Outdoors listeners, so make sure you mention J. Scott. I appreciate that, guys. Also, KUIU Ultralight Hunting. KUIU is the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. You can go to KUIU.com. That's KUIU.com to order. They're a direct-to-consumer company. And I want to thank KUIU. I also want to thank PhoneScope. Use the JScott20 promo code at phonescope.com. That's going to get you a 10% discount. And then onxmaps.com. I use onX every day for hunting, fishing, real estate, It's got great private public land overlay. It's got a great aerial map, topo map. You can import, export all your data, waypoints to Google Earth, and from Google Earth onto OnX. They also have a desktop version. I use the mobile app version on my phone mostly. It's a great app. Go to onxmaps.com, use the JScott20 promo code. You're going to save 20%. Jeff, I want to talk about specifically just a couple of these units. And I want to start with 16A. And I want to go through kind of your top 5 units that you guys hunt primarily. And what I want on this is just kind of a general overview of the unit, the type of terrain, type of bulls that guys will be looking at. And when we're talking about it, if it happens to be, the best or one of the best, or, out of the 5, maybe it's still good, but maybe there's, it's at the bottom of the 5. Kind of rank them, if you will, as we go through them. We'll start with 16A.
Okay, so out of the units that we hunt, 16A is probably our top unit. We're going to talk about 16D at the same time. So D is in dog and 16A is in apple. Both are comparable in quality, and D is going to be, there's a lot less tags in D in archery and rifle hunts. So the tag numbers being less, of course, has tougher draw odds. But they're both comparable as in the quality of elk. They border one another. So they're basically the same, type of terrain and unit. 16A, in my opinion, I like it a little better just due to it has more tag numbers, so you're able to have a little bit better draw odds in the unit than 16D. But, there's by no means D is any worse. I mean, they're both great hunts. Those are 2 of the top units in the state. Both have, super tough draw odds to draw. Those are the units in the state that you're looking at your 330, 340 upper end average, and they're probably only the couple of units that have that higher average than, most of the other units. One over the other, like I said, I mean, I would, if you can draw either of those tags, those are both excellent hunts. But that is definitely swinging for the fence because of the such low draw odds in those hunts. Now, something to remember also as we're talking about this, New Mexico has moved all of their season dates a week back. So that is something to remember. The first gun season, other than mobility impaired and youth, which or have also been moved a week back. So the 17th is the start day of the first gun season in the 16 units, as well as 15, 13, everything. So the 17th. Typically that has started around the 13th, but now the 17th is the start day of the first gun season, and the 24th will be the start day of the second gun season in New Mexico.
So that's actually going to move it. If you were getting any rutting on those hunts at all, it's going to kind of move it completely out of the rut, wouldn't you say?
Correct.
So it's actually going to make those rifle hunts worse. Correct.
So this will be the first year that's been that late ever. And the mobility impaired hunt, I don't have my book in front of me, but I want to say I think the 11th is when it starts. So it goes, you have a 5-day season, you have 2 days off, a 5-day season, 2 days off, a 5-day season. That's how October works. And I believe the start date is 11th on the mobility impaired or youth. And then the gun season starts after that, which the mobility impaired and youth are really low draw. I mean, there's only 30 tags in most of those hunts. But yes, it's taking it out of the rut. They've pushed all the hunts back. Even that youth hunt is going to be much different hunt because it usually starts around the 4th or 5th. And you could always catch the tail end of that rut. And now with it starting on the 11th, it's going to be a different hunt. It's those bigger bulls. That is I always say the 7th to the 12th right in there. I mean, that is when those those bigger bulls are pulling off those cows daily and leaving, and the rut really winds down fast.
One thing I'm thinking about that is, looking forward from a management standpoint and from a quality standpoint, I'm going to bet that in a couple of years, there's a good chance that you'll see an actual rise in age class, because those bigger bulls, like you say, as soon as they pull off, they almost vanish. They just, you can't even find them. It's going to make the hunt tougher, but I think it could save some bigger bulls' lives.
No, I really think it's going to, just because of I'm going to say the difficulty of finding those bulls. In those youth hunts, you always had a really solid bull maybe hanging out still, because they've had this 3-week lull with nobody hunting them, and they've just been out there hanging out with the cows. Now you still might see some of that, because if there's been no pressure, those bulls might not have any reason to leave the cows. But you are going to see bulls pulling off, and I agree with you, Jay. There's going to be some bulls that live because of that. Now, when it comes to the 17th date, typically those bulls were starting to pull off anyway, and you had very few bulls that were with the cows, big bulls, and guys had to go in there and hunt them like they did anyway. So there's going to be, I don't think that hunt's going to change dramatically. But that early hunt is definitely going to be a big difference, I think, just in finding size. There's going to be some small bulls with those cows that are going to, take the bullet versus some of the bigger bulls that may have been there the week before.
When you compare 16A and 16D as far as terrain and vegetation, is one or the other rougher or, more ponderosa or more juniper? Talk about that just a little bit.
They are both one and the same. D probably has a little more road access. I mean, obviously, it's closer to the a main highway, and there's many forest roads that come off of that, and it's obviously circled by main forest roads. So is 16A, but 16A probably has a little bit more country in it that is roadless, especially the west side of it. There's some really rough, deep, nasty canyons that go from the low country all the way up to the high country. Both units have multiple burns in them. The Buzzard Fire 2 or 3 years ago, whatever, burned a big section of 16D as well, and and the Gila fires and different fires they've had so a lot of burns in both units, and a lot of thick timbered country, pinon and juniper lower, and as you get up in the higher country, you get into the ponderosa, the spruce and pine and stuff, but lots of country burned in both units. Those are the only units in New Mexico that you can compare. You can compare those units to the Arizona, like Unit 1, Unit 27, same kind of terrain.
Okay. Let's dive into B and C. We
don't do a ton in C. Never been one of my favorite units. Not saying that it doesn't have solid hunting in certain parts of it. It's just never been on my radar due to a couple of factors, and there's a couple of big ranches in there and gives some access issues in a couple of places. Just not a super fan of the unit. Doesn't mean that there's not outfitters that kill solid big bulls in C. It's just not one that the only hunt we even lean on in C is maybe the youth hunt. But other than that, we don't hunt the unit very often. So B is a unit that it's obviously all wilderness. We've started hunting it more and more the last few years. B is one of those units you have to take with a grain of salt. It's got some big bulls in it. It's very tough to hunt. It's not a hunt for everybody. If somebody just thinks they're gonna, hey, I'm gonna drop my name in the hat for B and I'm gonna go in there and kill a huge bull, you got another thing coming, because it is not a unit that is for everyone. It's very tough. It's steep. It's got it's a huge country. Elk are pockety in the unit. The water is pockety. It's combined with two units, of course, 16B and 22, and it has just like I said, I mean, we backpack it a lot and hunt it. We use horses, of course, to get our game in and out. I mean, our camps in and our game out, and then when we're in there on foot, I mean, you got to be able to cover the ground, and it's a tougher hunt. Last year I hunted in there on the early hunt, killed two really nice bulls in there. But I think we probably did over 40 miles in 3 or 4 days on foot, with 70-pound packs on our backs. And so that's not for everyone. Pretty hardcore hunting. We pack a lot of water in with horses prior to the hunt, and you're living on mountain house, and we don't take a pile of hunters in there. We just like I said, it's a hunt that you better be prepared and know what you're in for before you go into that unit and hunt. A lot of outfitters don't like the unit due to what we're talking about. And with the hunts being moved back, we're cutting, we might cut a hunter. We're looking at that unit a lot different now because of the way the season dates have changed. So, people can call us and talk to us about the unit, but it's not, it's one you really have to study and understand before you dive into it, because if there's a unit in New Mexico that can kick your butt, that's it.
That's the one, huh?
That's the one. I mean, that is the one. I mean, it had a giant bull killed in it last year. One of the biggest bulls that probably came out of New Mexico came out of there. And, that the country that bull was killed in is no joke. I mean, I don't even know if there's a couple of, maybe 27 can be compared to it, but I would say B is even above and beyond that when it comes to the remoteness of getting in and getting deep in that unit is no joke. I mean, it's for real. And down in the country we hunt, I would say there's really nothing that compares to getting in and getting away like you can in B. And because of that, it's, like I said, it's not for everyone.
Talk a little bit about the first archery season and the second archery season and the pros and cons of each.
Okay, first and second. So you got 1st through the 14th of September. That's first archery season. And then you got the 10th through the 24th. I mean the 15th, sorry. 15th through the 24th, second archery season. So you got a 14-day season and a 10-day season. The first, September 1st through the 14th, obviously, historically, that is not prime rut, a time to be in the woods hunting rutting bulls. On that hunt, we prefer to hunt the second half of the 14 days. I'm not saying we won't book hunters on the 1st through the 7th, but we're just not a fan of that date. If you're expecting to come in and hunt rutting bulls, it's just probably not going to happen. I mean, you may hear one here and one there, but the bulls are coming in looking for cows. They might be coming from their, where they're summering, and they're traveling into where they're going to rut. Now, the second part of that hunt can be a good hunt. I would never shy away from that hunt. If you're a super experienced archery hunter, you can glass, and that is a time when some of the bulls are pretty callable if you know how to call and know what situation presents itself. I mean, we've run a pretty high success rate on that first hunt. But it's the same thing. It's when you even book with an outfitter, a lot of guys set water during that time. I'm not a big fan of water. I'm not saying we don't set water. I just don't really like hunting water. So sometimes if we have an older client that is not as mobile as someone else, that, that's the hunt we might put him in for, because it's not as much, action in that hunt. So it's more, he might sit more in that hunt. In the second hunt, obviously the rut comes on strong. And that's historically, the best time to be in the woods, hunting, the rut. Me, myself, I've killed a lot of bulls on the 1st through the 14th hunt, because, I tend to like that hunt due to a couple of reasons. Just, bulls aren't not with the cows yet, and sometimes they're a little bit, they're callable, and you can get in there and they don't have 10 cows with them, and they're loners looking, and it gives some pretty good spot and stock opportunities in that hunt. But I've also got completely schooled on that hunt. And, I had the tag 2 years ago in the bad drought year in the first season, and I didn't put my release on in 14 days. I mean, it was, first off, the antler growth was awful, and I saw nothing I wanted to shoot. And the rut was non-existent. I mean, I think I heard like 8 bugles in 10 days of being in the backcountry.
Wow.
It was rough. So I was pretty much spotting and stalking, and I would see upwards 15, 20 bulls a day and never saw a bull I would even stick an arrow in. So I just was like, it was a tough hunt. Toughest one I'd ever been on personally for myself.
Any other things out there that we need to cover as far as guided hunts that you do in New Mexico? I mean, I know there's a lot of different animals and such, but anything that you want to cover, antelope, Barbary sheep, bighorns, any of that stuff, or you primarily focus on elk?
We primarily, people know us for elk and deer. Our deer, we cut back a few years ago on our deer. We've ramped up our deer. We're moving back into a couple of other units that we hunt. They can call us and discuss that. There's been some season changes with deer, which I think are going to make a couple of the deer hunts we hunted in the past better. It might take a few years for some of that to come around, but we used to take quite a few deer hunters, and then we started cutting way back. We're going to move back into the Kaibab in Arizona and do some more. We used to hunt the Kaibab pretty heavy. We're going to start moving back into the Kaibab and hunting that again due to, some management that's gone on there, which Kaibab's doing really good right now. And of course, your exotics in New Mexico, your Barbary sheep hunts, your oryx, ibex, different things like that. Those are always, a lot of people like to put in for those, and those hunts, have high success rates. The sheep, we put in a number of sheep hunters. There's other outfitters in New Mexico that are kind of known for sheep, which apply probably the bulk of the sheep hunters. We do put in a number of sheep hunters every year. And if you're interested in a sheep tag, a desert or a rocky, you should definitely be looking at New Mexico, because, without having a point system, you're just as lucky as anyone else to draw that tag. It's definitely a state that you could hit the lottery and win a sheep tag. You got to be putting in. They obviously hold your money, and it's $3,100 to put in, but it's a state that you don't have to have points. Where Arizona, you're not even going to hardly be, your odds of drawing a sheep tag in Arizona without, max points is pretty tough.
Right.
And New Mexico is just not that way. So you should really be leaning towards New Mexico and at least trying to, see if you can draw one of those tags. When you talk about deer, New Mexico, it has its couple of premier deer units, and those deer units have been kind of hammered on. There's still great bucks in those units. There's big deer in lots of other units. The Gila is not known for, it's primarily elk. There are big deer here and there. It's, so if you're looking for a deer hunt, it's not something you're going to say, I'm going to go and see and pass up multiple 160s to kill a 180. But 180, 190 kind of bucks live in every unit in the state. They're here and there. And, if a guy scouts or goes with an outfitter that has a specific buck found, I mean, there's some options for deer, but always go into deer in New Mexico, with the opportunity that there is big deer in New Mexico in spots. The northern part of the state has primarily the better deer hunting, and your units such as 2B, 2A, 2C, 5B, those units up north are kind of historically known for the, that Rio Arriba County and different things. Those are known for the, the better deer hunting. But some of those hunts have higher tag numbers in them, and, they've been banged up, but they're still good deer hunts considering, deer hunting in the West. There's also, we've opened up a couple of new hunts. We have a new Coues deer hunt we're looking at, a couple of different things in a couple of units. Obviously, antelope is always a popular one to put in for. Pretty tough, and with the changes they made last year, we're going to see where the antelope goes here in the next couple of years. Last year, we killed a couple of really solid bucks in New Mexico. The draw's tough, but right now there's still some really good bucks to be killed over there, but the way the new system works, it'll be interesting to see what happens with antelope in New Mexico. But something else to know is New Mexico's license. You have to buy your license and habitat stamp just like you do in Arizona. That's another, something to know, where you used to be able to click a box and get it refunded. So when you put in for your application this year, they're a money holding state. So say you put in for 5 hunts and your bill totals $6,500. They're going to hold that money, and then when they put the money back on your card, they will keep $13 per species for your application fee, and the license fee of $65 is also non-refundable. So that's something.
Jeff, can you buy the license? Do you have to buy it ahead of time, or in the application process on the computer, can you go ahead and buy the license at the time when you apply?
No, you can. That's one thing. They have a really nice licensing system. I wish Arizona would take notice. You can get in there and you can punch in all your information. You can punch in all your information. You can make your hunt choices, your hunt selections, and you put it in your shopping cart. You can go through there and do all your shopping, buying everything, and then you can go check out. And that is really an awesome deal, where how big a pain in the butt Arizona is really difficult, because you have to punch in that information specifically for every person, every hunt, every little thing. You have to go back and re-enter all of that, and it's really time consuming. And New Mexico is really streamlined, has a really good system for having that shopping cart. You go in there and you make all your choices: bighorn sheep, elk, deer, everything. Buy your license, boom, and it's all done at one transaction.
Awesome.
Now that is a good question, because we haven't actually. We're getting ready to start our application process. I don't think you have to buy that license ahead of time. But don't quote me on that, because now that you have to do that, I don't think you have to purchase it first, but if you do, it'll tell you. It won't let you go forward. The system won't let you move forward without, if you don't have something correct, it won't let you push forward in the system.
Right. So Arizona's going to be hitting cards soon. Are you expecting anything?
Yeah, we've got, this year we had quite a few guys that, had the points to draw specific hunts. It's funny, we talked about how long I've been doing this, and 20 years is, I started my own business in 99, and when I pushed the shows really hard when I was younger, obviously that was, 15, 20 years, different things. So I have a lot of guys that are maturing in their points now. And it's funny it's taken this long. I literally have had guys in the system for that long. And, they've become, what's crazy is some of these guys I met when they were 40 and they're 60 now.
Yeah.
And they're finally going to draw a tag in Arizona. And and I have to break the news to them that maybe the unit we were, all amped up about is not the same unit, and the hunt's not the same hunt. And, I got guys that we're going to hopefully draw, with point creep. People are talking about point creep in Arizona, and it's every year some of that changes depending on how the system works. So it'll be interesting. Last year I put guys in for hunts I thought they would draw, and they didn't draw, and I drew some guys in hunts I didn't think they would draw. I mean, it's kind of Arizona's, I don't know, sometimes interesting. The way the system works is kind of interesting, So, things have changed. One, right now, not on a lot of people's radar. Hasn't got a lot of hype. 5 years ago they were knocking down 400-inch bulls in Unit 1, and they really have, they cut a lot of tags out of 1 and 27 this year. Some say it's not enough. Some say it'll help. Yeah, I think anything helps. But, right now, 1 may be a little easier to draw for somebody because it just didn't get a lot of hype. Most of the people haven't even ranked Unit 1 in the top 5, and it's always been in the top 5. And this year it's, it's got a lot of bad press. People understand how things have kind of leaned different ways. So we'll see. We expect to, fill up our hunts in these units. We're hunting a couple of other units in Arizona as well. We've moved into a couple other units that we've tried out here in the last couple of years and had some pretty good success. Have a little bit easier draw odds, and some of those units have got some publicity. People have they've got a lot of people have heard about different units that maybe were sleepers on the back end, and it'll be funny to see some of those units jump.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of units that we thought we were. You think you're the only guy that knows something, but you're not the only guy that knows something.
Sure. It's
never that way, and especially with today with social media, with the mapping systems that people have, and with the availability of information. Things are just different now than they were 10 years ago. And in my opinion, it's kind of hurt hunting in a lot of ways, where before you had to get out and you had to do a lot of work and effort on the back end to really be successful. You really don't have to do as much as you used to have to do. And, with trail cams and with everything that's out here, the technology in the hunting industry, obviously this is my opinion. It's like I hunted the Strip this year for the first time. I went on the Strip and hunted with one of my clients, and I was pretty shocked. I had heard stories, but I was pretty shocked at what it really was, and it really put a bad taste in my mouth for the hunting side of hunting. And it was just it was I don't even know how to explain it. It was I was shocked. I was just shocked at
a rat race.
How you don't have to be, back in the day, you'd look back at tracking and glassing and hunting. And I went up there with kind of this idea, the Strip. Oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome, and this and this and this. And I got up there and we saw a lot of big deer, but I'll just use one example. So there was one area that had multiple big deer hitting a dirt tank. And out of the 4 big monster deer that were hitting this dirt tank, I believe 3 of them got killed. And we kind of heard through the grapevine about one of the big bucks, so we went to hunt there. And we actually saw the buck. We can't guarantee that it was the buck that we were actually looking for, but we got a glimpse of a big monster deer very close to him, but I wasn't with my hunter at the time. I was probably 30 yards away. By the time he got my attention and we got to looking, he had moved into some thick country, and he was headed towards the water. Well, it was right at dark, and the next morning, that deer either got shined that night or he hit the water. We knew he hit the water. We were told he hit the water. the next day there was over 50 people hunting that buck. And I climbed on the knob in the early light, and I couldn't even glass the valley. There was so much dust in the valley that I couldn't even see into the trees because there were so many trucks running around looking for this one deer. And he was a 240 type deer, and I just climbed back down. We went to the truck, and I didn't even, I was just kind of like, I threw my hands in the air. I mean, here I am up there with my hunter. And, another time I was hunting another spot, and, one of my buddies had told me that night when we got back to the truck, he said, I saw 18 people glassing you. He says, you were right down in the mix, and there was a big deer. We were, he was bedded at dark, and we found out that there was 21 people helping that one hunter. Now, whether they were guiding or spotting or what, but that was it was kind of shocking. I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, it's something for sure. I've been up there three times, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, these big deer get killed. I'm gonna, if they ever do anything with this trail cam deal, I kind of look at it like that's the steroid era of baseball in the hunting world. It'll be like, oh, I killed this buck in this year. Oh yeah, that's when the trail cams, because people check the trail cams during the hunt, and if that buck hit that drinker that night, I mean, the army comes the next day, that buck's gonna die.
Right.
And I don't know. It was just a little different. I mean, that, to me, deer hunting, it's just a different deal, and some, obviously there's people out there that are going to be like, agree with one thing and agree with another. It's all opinions. But, man, sometimes I think the animals are losing out. And, like Ryan Hatch told me one time, there's no mysteries on the strip anymore. There's no mysteries.
Yeah.
It's, everything's known. And I don't know. That for hunting, I think sometimes that's a little bit sad. It would be, and don't get me wrong, I run trail cams. I'm not going to say I don't. I'm not trying to get on a high horse or anything. We do it in other units because, it's what we have to do to keep up with, everyone else in a way. And they only do so much in these big timbered units. But when you go up there and you're checking all that stuff, they're hitting that water. It's definitely a conversation that people are looking at right now, and I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm not really, I guess I am kind of giving my opinion.
That's all right, though. I mean, at some point we have to wonder if we've overcooked it and how far we've come and what we're trying to accomplish. And there's, those are all good conversations to have for sure.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it is a neat place, and there's big deer. It's not, it's been managed, and, you wonder, man, how does it sustain this every year?
Yeah, that's what I wonder, how it just keeps, big bucks. It doesn't seem like they're declining. It just seems like we keep killing big bucks.
That's right.
You wonder if you did have some control over that, just chaos. If the enjoyment would be higher. And anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. But
right,
Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on, talking about New Mexico and Arizona, and it's always great having you. I want to give you a chance to let the listeners know how they can reach out. I know you love talking hunting, so why don't you do that now? And just thanks for coming on.
So the best way to reach us, you can call me directly at 928-245-2668. That's my cell number. And you can call me directly, text message me, or you can, message us on Instagram at hunthard_gear. And then Facebook is hunthard, is our Facebook handle, on Facebook. And then, of course, our website, is hunthard.com. And of course, we sell, a lifestyle apparel line, and you can go into the Outfitters and Game. We don't, most of our stuff, comes from our social media, so that's the best way that people contact us. I run all of that, so I'm a little back on some of it. I'm not, I wish I was a little more a geek when it came
tech
to
ninja.
Tech Ninja. I missed the boat on that, and but we're trying to get ahead of that, and so that's the way to get a hold of us. And if anyone ever has any questions or comments or anything, feel free to call and talk about it, because we want people to be successful whether they hunt with our outfit or not. It's people wait a long time to draw these tags, and if we can't help you, we know of qualified outfitters that can. So, and we work with a lot of different guys, and we're friends with a lot of guys up north, and we kick hunters back and forth from time to time. I have a number of New Mexico guys that I've sent to other outfitters in areas that we don't hunt, and different things like that. So, and they've done the same. So we have good relationships with many of those outfitters. So,
right on, buddy. God bless you. Take care.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks, Jay.
All right, bye.